I'm Kimberly.
I'm Michael.
And welcome to Real Takes
and Movie Breaks.
And today we are reviewing the film
Heretic,
starring Hugh Grant, Chloe East, and
Sophie
Thatcher. So we'll do a little brief summary, and then we'll talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and if we would recommend watching it. This review will include a few spoilers. It starts with these two missionaries from the Latter-day Saints.
Mormons,
Mormons, who are talking about pornography, ironically, and
at the very beginning.
At the very beginning, it's clear they're Mormons, and they care about their faith, and they're riding their bikes to someone's house who has requested more information about their faith. And it's rainy and storming, and who answers the door but the charming Hugh Grant.
Hugh Grant answers the door, and then we go on a journey of suspense and some horror and some smart dialogue about theology, and a lot of dialogue, actually.
The two girls are dedicated to converting people and sharing their faith, and so they agree to go into his house because they say, well, technically we're supposed to stay out here unless there's a woman present. And he says, oh, well, my wife is making a blueberry pie, and they can smell the scent of the blueberry pie, so they agree to step in because it's raining. That's their biggest mistake. And as soon as they step in the door, he even says, I have metal plates in the walls. Is that okay? And it doesn't seem to faze them.
So, of course, they can't use their cell phone because there's metal plates in the wall.
Yeah, and he questions their religion. And slowly but surely, they realize they're trapped there. They can't get out the door. And he says, oh, well, the locks are automatic and they won't open until tomorrow. He tells them the only way to escape is out the back door. And he continues to question their faith. They have sort of a theological debate. And then it gets creepier and creepier.
Yeah. So anyway, the film functions as the two Mormons. They come over to the guy's house. The guy is questioning not just Mormonism, but religion in general. Mm-hmm. And he seems to be very knowledgeable about religion. Suspiciously so. Because he's asking them to come over, give him a pamphlet about Mormonism, but he knows the entire history of the Mormon church.
Yeah.
So they get into a little bit of a debate about religion. It's very interesting it's very well crafted dialogue and sort of suspense about what is he up to, what's he going to do. These two girls are kind of in over their head. They're locked in this house. We get basically to the hour in point. We're like at the halfway point of the film, and at this point is when he says you can't go out the front door because the lock is on a timer, so you have to go out the back door. And then that's when he writes on the two doors belief and disbelief. So they have to make a choice between the two doors. Now, after that point, we get into, I would say, sort of formulaic horror movie stuff once we're in the basement.
Yeah.
Right? So at that point, it's like we're kind of done with the ideas and theology and the back and forth. We're going to give you some... it's interesting because it's not really a horror movie.
Yeah, it's sort of a horror movie. It has horror elements, but it's more of a psychological thriller because, like he said, the first hour of the movie is kind of an interesting discussion about the history of religion. He draws parallels to board games, and he talks about how
the original Monopoly
was something else.
Lord Ericsson's plantation or whatever from the 1800s, and then it was evolved into Monopoly. And every religion has that original Monopoly game that no one knows.
Yeah.
And then the modern day religion is Monopoly.
He also equates it to songs. He talks about an old song and how Radiohead's Creep is sort of a derivative. So he's basically talking about how a lot of culture, art, things, they're all derivatives of derivatives of derivatives.
It's a new iteration.
Yeah, everything is a new iteration.
Iterations, that's his big thing.
I mean, Hugh Grant is fun to watch. It's hard to believe that he's actually psychotic or sociopathic because he's so charming. He still has that same charm he had when he played the romantic lead back in the 90s. He still has that same charm. So that's, a blessing and a curse, I guess. But I do think he plays the character well. He's fun to watch. I thought the two girls were really great. Both of them, great actresses. And so because this film is so dialogue heavy, it requires really good actors. And so the film definitely had that. And I also liked a lot of the theological ideas, and I like that how they were presented in a way that you could follow without telling you one way is correct and one way is incorrect. There were times in the movie where I could actually follow our psychopathic's thought process, and there were other points in the movie where I could follow the belief systems of the Mormons, the girls. And so I feel like both perspectives were fairly represented. You don't walk away from the film saying, oh, this film clearly believes that everyone should be Mormon, or this film clearly believes everyone should be atheists. All the information is presented in a way that can be appealing to both. So I really like that aspect of the film.
So once we get past the belief and disbelief doors, where he tells them you can go through either door, what we find, spoilers, they go down the stairs into this little dungeon. Both doors lead into this little dungeon, and it's just a room with stone. It's like an old style dungeon style room. So we go from a house that's very warm and feels like it's right out of the 1970s. He's wearing like a sweater. He's wearing like a Cosby sweater, and then they go into this dungeon. And once they're in this dungeon, that's when we get into the whole. There are these little minions that he has that are in cages, and he brings them out, and he kind of does his whole. This is what I was leading you to all along, sort of spiel. Also, he slices the girl's neck.
Yeah,
and this is where I have a problem, because Hugh Grant's character is so effective by not doing that stuff. When he slices her neck and they have to cross that Rubicon into why, like, okay, I get it. He's leading the one girl to this point where he shows her the one true religion, right? And the other girl has disbelief, right? The
other girl has doubts.
She has doubts. She believes that the woman that he sent up to eat the blueberry pie and then was poisoned and then he resurrects her or whatever. That whole bit. She doesn't believe that she was resurrected. She believes that he switched.
It was a magic trick.
That he switched the women out. It's a magic trick.
That he switched the bodies.
So because she's questioning him and saying, I don't believe it, then he slits her throat. Because the point that the film is making is that anybody who questions and tries to break away from religion, then the orthodoxy will then kill you. They'll snuff you out, which is what he does to her. But the other girl wants to see the truth. She wants to see what the one true religion is. So she goes down into the deeper cellar. We get into the deeper cellar, and then the one true religion is it's a bunch of women in cages that he feeds every day and has as his slaves. So he tells her that, spoilers, and this is the Willy Wonka ending, which is the one true religion is control. And so he is God in this scenario. Yeah. That he has sort of orchestrated her into. And then we get this whole, this is why you did this and why you did that, and it led us here, it led us to this, it led us to that. But my thing is, like, they never really had any sort of choice or anything. They're already in this. They were trapped. They were trapped. So I guess that's the point, is that it's control all along. I just don't think it's very profound. I think that when you get to that ending, I kind of felt like, okay, well...
I agree with you that it was anticlimactic because they even ask him, why are you doing all of this? And his response is, why are you letting me? But really, they're trying to escape. So they're trying to... leave. So it's not like they're just willingly letting him do all of this stuff. So that response wasn't very satisfying to me. What I liked was sort of the cat and mouse game he was sort of playing with them. I liked the slow burn aspect because as a female, I could kind of really identify with these characters, thinking, okay, what would I do in this situation? So for the first hour, I was intrigued, and to your point, as soon as he put the doors up, belief or disbelief, I was really curious to see what the doors would lead to, and then it turns out they lead to the same place.
Right.
So that is an interesting thought, to think about. Okay, so he's trying to make the point, it doesn't matter what you believe, we're all going to go to hell, or we're all going to, end up in the same place, whether you have faith or not.
So the speech he gives, he says, if God is real, then it's a horrible fate that he's crafted for people. It isn't that horrible. And if God isn't real, then we all just die and rot, and then there's nothing. And isn't that horrible too?
Yeah.
So it's both horrible.
One of the first things he asks them is, how do you feel about polygamy? But what I find interesting is what the sisters say. And when you are actually listening to what the sisters say, their points seem pretty valid, logical, not illogical. And even at the end, when she finally stabs him, and during the whole magic underwear bit, he says something about her magic underwear, and then she stabs him. It's sort of the same way that they were planning on attacking him, and he's sort of sarcastically asking her to pray because he stabbed her in the gut, she stabbed him in the throat, and they're both bleeding, and he's crawling up to her asking her, pray facetiously, and she actually says something which I think is pretty profound. She says, studies have shown that prayer doesn't work, but the reason we do it is because it's nice to think about someone else. And so she just starts praying. And what I really liked was this part. She starts praying, and then suddenly the girl that we thought was dead stabs him. And he's about to stab her with something that's clearly symbolic. And she comes back, knocks him out. And so the other girl...
She kills him. There's nails on this piece of wood.
Nails on the... Very symbolic.
Nails on a piece of wood.
Very on the nose, symbolic. So the sister that we think has already bled to death still has a little life force in her. But the timing of it is interesting because she's praying, and then her sister comes up, kills him, so she can crawl out the window and escape. And what I did like was how it all comes full circle, because at the beginning she says something really sweet. She says, when I die, I want to be a butterfly and just land on my loved one's hands, just on their hands, to let them know I'm still around. And she crawls out of this, this house, and she's crawling in nature. She has her phone. She's probably calling for help. And then you see a little butterfly landing on her hand. So I really like that ambiguity, because it is ambiguous. Did she actually die? Is she imagining this? Or is this really happening? And is this an actual symbol of hope that maybe they were right? So that's what I really liked about the ending, is it poses the question, well, what if the girls are actually right? And it also poses the question, what if, Hugh Grant's character is actually right? So I like that it's thought-provoking. But what I didn't like was a lot of the stuff that happened in the cellar. Yeah. Because the movie logic there is so far-fetched. Like, he actually has a bunch of women in cages that he's keeping alive.
Yeah, you have to jump, like, everything to that point. It's possible that he has a door that has a lock on it that's a timer, and then everything is sort of plausible. But once we get into the cellar and there's a bunch of women in cages that are mindlessly letting him enslave them, is just pretty silly.
Pretty ridiculous.
I don't think they would live. Like, I think they would probably just die at some point.
Yeah, well, he's just like supposed to be feeding them like dogs, and they poop in the cages. They all look really dirty. Like, the makeup looked all like cheesy. Yeah. Even the makeup there, I was like, okay.
It's just it was like grotesque, and I guess that was the point. Like, but I feel like when you get to, there's an underground thing with a bunch of enslaved people that are being tortured. I feel like when you get to that cliche in a movie, then you've kind of lost anywhere to go. I think there was somewhere further to go with this material, and I just think they couldn't come up with anywhere else to go with it that would have been really interesting. Mm-hmm. Like, I was thinking in my head, the one true religion is control. It's like, okay, so what you're really saying is that really he's just a person of, he's a heretic. He's a person of disbelief, mm-hmm. who is but he understands religion. He's a theologian, but he is disbelief. The whole film sort of thesis is disbelief. Mm-hmm. I think there actually could have been somewhere further that the film could have taken it, what the one true religion is, which is, I mean, human beings have this need to believe in something, right? So I feel like that supersedes control, because if you look at the history of religion, it's always people breaking away from the orthodoxy, the traditional way of doing this religion. You'll have these different movements and different iterations, as he describes it, and I feel like that was sort of left at the wayside, and we go back to this archaic thing of him basically saying that the people that run the religion, or the religion, the hierarchy of the religion itself, the people who've indoctrinated, they're the ones that control everything, and we're all just sort of their puppets, mm-hmm. if you believe in this stuff. And I feel like that's actually kind of a lazy mm-hmm. thing to arrive at. I mean, I guess it's a horror movie, so you gotta come to some conclusion. But I think there was like, one of my favorite films that I compare this movie to is the original Wicker Man from 1973. And if you haven't seen that film, the ending that the film gets to is this ambiguity over whether or not the pagan's belief is substantiated or the Christian's beliefs is substantiated, and we're not quite clear if it's real or not, mm-hmm. and if or what is or who's right, I guess, mm-hmm. or if none of them are right. Mm-hmm. It doesn't answer the question. Mm-hmm. So I think that, and there's something kind of scary about that. It was mm-hmm. like eerie. With this, it was like, oh, okay, he's just a nutcase. He's just a crazy person who kills people and enslaves them. He's a nut. That's what we thought all along.
I would have loved to see the girls outsmart him. That's what I was hoping would happen. And I kept thinking, okay, if I was in this situation, one, I would have never gone inside to begin with. Two, as soon as he said, oh, there's metal plates in the walls, is that okay? That would have been a red flag. Three,
characters making bad decisions.
Yeah, as soon as they tried to leave and they realized the door was locked, and he says, "Oh, well, it's on a timer, and the timer won't unlock until the morning." I would have just been like, "Okay, well then we'll just sleep here on the couch and wait till morning. Good night," and just stayed in the living room. Because the person in charge of them, they knew that he would probably be out looking for them. And he did. That character did come looking for them, knocking on the front door. And if they had just stayed in the living room, they would have been right there. So they didn't have to go into the cellar, is my point.
Yeah, the decisions that they made are kind of made for the expediency and the convenience of the script itself, mm-hmm. rather than what would a person actually do in the situation. I think when that happens, stuff starts to kind of break for us, the viewer. But anyway, what would you give it out of 5?
Out of 5, I give it a 2.
I will give it a 2.5 out of 5. I think it's really well made. I think the first hour is fantastic. The dialogue is really good dialogue. It's really well written. I just think it starts to fall apart at the seams. It starts to delaminate in the last 45 minutes.
Yeah, I would have given it a higher rating if the female characters could have outsmarted him. Yeah. And he would have he would have gotten what he deserved.
Yeah, or maybe or maybe at the end he actually really believes in this stuff. At the end, like you actually bring him around.
Yes, if the girls could have actually given him something new to think about. Like he presents all these different ideas. At one point, he talks about the simulation theory and how. Because he slits the girl's throat and then he's digging through her arm and he pulls out something. He's like, oh, it's a chip. This might be evidence of the simulation theory.
She wasn't a real person.
And then the other girl was like... He
says that she was like a robot.
Yeah, and then the other girl is like, I think that's actually a birth control thing. Yeah. And so I saw the potential for the girls to actually... kind of change his mind a little bit. And so I think if the film had gone that route...
Or at least manipulated him in a way where they could have escaped.
Yes.
Instead of just, stab him, run.
Yeah.
Which is, you fall into... There's nothing there's nothing else that you can do, and so you just got to have like a suspenseful little fight scene, and then it's over. Mm-hmm. But I give it a 2.5 out of. I think Hugh Grant's performance is really great, and I think it's very well made. It's very well crafted. Mm-hmm. If I made a movie like this, I'd be very proud of it. Mm-hmm. So I'm not like my criticisms are these are nitpicky things, but for what it is, it's a fun one to go see. I like it more than comic book movies. So
yeah, I mean, if you like theology, if you haven't seen it yet. Maybe give it a try. If you like horror, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it just because it's not really horror, but it's not really all just psychological thriller either. So I don't know if I would recommend seeing it if you haven't seen it yet, especially if you just watched our review. We just told you everything about it. But if you have seen it, hopefully watching this review will help you kind of process it and understand it perhaps on a different level. So if there are any other films you would like us to watch and review, please comment below. And if you have seen the film, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Let us know what you think. Do you think that we're right? Do you think that we were too easy on the film, too hard on the film? What would you rate it? Let us know. And in the meantime, stay real.
Have good takes.